I want to inspire people to not only take control of their financial lives, but their futures in general. You've got to go get it. You've got to go make it happen. No one's going to give anything to you. You can do it. And we are up here, Mr. Lotito. How you doing?
Doing good, man. How you doing?
Dude, I am doing well. I'm really excited to have you on because back in the day when young Josh was not financially literate, you were the one that pushed me towards the stock market, pushed me towards all these things. And I remember looking at your stories, and I've told this story in videos. Yeah. Had a friend who was you. Mm-hmm. I always watched his stories. I always watched kind of his content. I'm like, what is he doing? How is he making this money? And that sent me down this rabbit hole and really led me to where I am today. So I'm really excited to get into all this stuff about you and talk about you in general.
Let's get it, man. I'm excited. Yeah, no, like you were one of like the people that reached out to me about like how to get into investing in stocks. And I know, so going back, like we originally met through powerlifting.
Right. Pull that mic a little closer. Yeah, kind of keep it like a fist away from your face.
All right. So we originally met through powerlifting. And then, you know, like as everything happens, like you kind of venture away from it.
Right.
We weren't into powerlifting as we were, but we still kept in touch through social media. And then I, you know, eventually started my YouTube page, which we're going to get into later on. But yeah, man, I'm excited. You were one of the people that reached out, and there's been other handful of people that have reached out and like, hey, like you really changed my entire financial situation.
It's crazy, right, to think about it, because you don't think you have that much of an impact, but then there's so many people that just reach out and they're like, no, you did this for me.
Right.
I feel like that's so motivating, and you just want to keep going and keep doing more after that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's start off with kind of like the trading side of things. I know that's what I really tried to get into at first, and I hated it. I hated every part of it. I wasn't good at it.
It's tough.
It's tough. Like that deterred me away from investing for a while, because I'm like, the stock market's gambling.
Right.
But little did I know, I just needed to find a strategy I was a little more comfortable with.
Right.
So how did you get into trading, and how did you ultimately learn how to trade?
Right. Yeah. So we'll go back a little bit. So originally I got into like I know we're going to touch upon this a little later on, but I want to just set the backstory a little.
Sure. Go ahead.
So originally I got into into the stock market. Funny story, really funny story. We were about 21 years old. Me and my buddy, we went out to Notch Average Joe's and we sat down, and our friend gave us a tip about potential like up and coming marijuana penny stock, and I was like, oh, like sounds cool. Like, how does that work? Like, and we both opened E-Trade accounts, and we both put in $1,000 in the account. We put the money into the stock. It's called Magola, MGON. You can look it up right now. It's like 0.00001 cent a share.
Sounds like you did well with that investment.
Yeah, you'll see. It's funny. It's funny how this worked. We put the $1,000 in. We're like, all right, we're just gonna put it in there, see what happens. Like, whatever happens. We both woke up the next day. Went up like 1,000%. We both like cashed out because we had our set like our limit orders in to like sell orders in, and they both sold for us. So that's how I originally got into like investing into the stock market. I'm like, wow, like this could be pretty lucrative. And of course,
you made money right off the back like that,
right? Which is not typical for most people.
Yeah.
And then you know I had some more like smaller trades that I lost money on, and then I was like, oh, like I don't know if this is for me, whatever. And then I started my long-term portfolio where I bought like Starbucks, like just your traditional like dividend stocks.
Right, yeah.
And that's what I was doing for a little while. Nothing too crazy. I kind of like got away from like the day trading because I started to lose money because, you know, if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to lose money. Right?
Yeah.
And I was, you know, just got into it. So that's a little backstory. How I originally got into like day trading, that was back in like 2017, 18, where I really started to dig into it. And it was like Timothy Sykes, right? Timothy Sykes, he comes up, you know. I didn't buy any of his courses, but I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Like, I want to look into it a little bit more. Most of this information you can find on YouTube or Google. Like, anybody can find this information online, not to be like anything crazy. Most people lose money day trading, and I've had my fair share of like losing trades.
I looked this up yesterday. It was some ridiculous percentage. It was like 70 or 80% like lose money day trading. And I'm just like, well, I can see why.
Yes.
Like for a lot of reasons, because people don't stick with it. People don't learn. There's endless reasons why I could go on about why people lose money day trading.
So yeah, I've had some really good trades. You know, when Neo first IPO'd,
yes,
I made like 10 grand on that trade.
I remember you telling me this. Evan did too, right? He made some ridiculous amount of money. He's like, yeah, we were just like swing trading that. I'm like, good for you. Like, that's awesome.
Yeah. So like I've had like really good trades where like I've made like 10 grand and I've gotten crushed on trades like AMPE, for example, a pharmaceutical company. they were supposed to come out with a new drug that was going to cure the osteoporosis of the knee. They were going into their their new trial, and they had a whole bunch of people that they were experimenting on, and the chances of them having the drug approved were pretty high.
Right.
And at the time, I'm like, why not? What's going on?
YOLO.
Right? Yeah. I remember it was after hours. They released the news. The stock plummeted. I got crushed. I lost like $4 or $5 grand,
Oof.
like in a second, like just gone. And that really just put into my perspective that it's all learning experience. Like you learn from your trades. I would hope so. Most people should learn from what their experiences were in the past.
That's the thing. I feel like most people don't.
Which is bad, which is very bad. Yeah. So yeah, man, like I've had anybody that comes on or anybody that tells you that they haven't had any bad trades or they're perfect every time, like they're probably lying to you. Like people lose money a lot and they win money a lot. It just depends. Like, can you be that person that wins more than they lose?
Right. Yeah. So you just basically taught yourself just from like YouTube. You didn't take any course at all, just like all online stuff, all that.
Dude, everything is online for free. You can learn anything you want to learn online through Google, through YouTube. It's not rocket science, right? Like if you put the time in and the effort and you learn how to do something, you should know how to do it. Like,
and the thing is,
having
like,
to pay to do it, unless it's like some like knowledge that like nobody knows about. That's like very secretive and it's very new. And it's like, for example, like I know we're gonna touch upon this later, but like YouTube, like way back in the day, nobody really knew what YouTube was. Like nobody knew about the YouTube Partner Program. There was no information on it. But like if you were like the few people that were in that, you were making money and like nobody really knew about it. So like there's like things like that, but most information is generally available out in the public for free.
That's what Max was saying when I did the podcast with him. He was like, back when I started, like we didn't have like people on YouTube like teaching us what to do. Like we had to basically figure it out on our own.
Yes.
That's one of his arguments why he thinks growing a YouTube channel now is a lot easier. Mm-hmm. I have a lot of arguments why I think it might be a little bit harder now because it's a more saturated market, but I can see the argument either way at the end of the day.
Right.
But yeah, the thing is, and what I think people don't understand is everything's available online and you can Google everything, but sometimes it comes down to how you Google it. Like Googling is a skill that you have to get better at. Right. Like most people are like, all right, I Googled this and I didn't find the answer, so it must not exist. Like you need to, like look at some keywords, kind of like change your wording and just like, I guess, filter through like all the BS and find stuff that's going to really be beneficial to you.
Right. And YouTube, essentially you can put into YouTube like in quotes like exactly what you want to search. You can search by website name. There's all these various syntaxes that you can use on Google search to find exactly what you want, and people don't realize that you can do that.
Right.
But like coming from somebody who's I have a coding background, like I know these different like little hacks, I guess you could say, right, where you can find like various ways to get information quicker and easier just by narrowing down the results, the different things that you want.
Right.
So.
What are some of your biggest winners since you've been trading?
Yeah, I would say Neo is probably one of my bigger ones, right? So it really comes down to I never traded with margin. I was never like, I want to put more money in than I have. I never had a margin account. I always traded with a cash account, always. Right. And I really didn't want to put in more eggs in the basket than I needed to, right? So I would, for example, like if it was like a Neo trade or some of these smaller type companies that are like $5 a share, $6 a share, I would buy like 1,000, 2,000 shares at a time, depending. But I would say Neo was probably one of my bigger trades. I've had some smaller trades, $3,000, $4,000 trades, and I've had some losers too, right? It's not that easy, right? You have to spend a lot of time watching the charts, seeing where the breakout's going to be. Like cup and handle formations, right? And you got to look for those, right? It's a lot of the time it's waiting for the right setup and then trying to time that setup where you can get in on that breakout and then get out of the trade, right? Mm-hmm. But it doesn't always work like that. In a perfect scenario, yeah, it would work like that. What the worst thing you'd want to do is get stuck in a trade where it's just moving sideways and you don't know where it's going to go and then it breaks to the downside and you get crushed, right? Mm-hmm. So you're trying to make it where you can get to the point where you get into the trade before that breakout and you get that upside gain, right? So Neo is probably my biggest day trade, I would say, 10 grand, maybe a little more than that. And then, smaller trades, 2, 3, 4,000 here and there. Yeah, nothing like 100 grand, 200 grand,
nothing insane like that.
Nothing crazy. Cause like I didn't have enough capital and margin to make it where I would be able to get that upside, right?
Right.
'Cause the more risk you take, obviously, the more money you could lose, right? And I would usually cap my losses around like 2 to 3%. I would try to, and then the upside, between 4 to 6%, I was aiming for most of the time,
Right.
And it depended, right? It depended on how fast the stock moved. If it was a multi-day runner, like if I was going to hold it, like swing trade it instead of day trade it, right? I've had some swing trades I've done. So yeah, that's about it. And most of my focus now so when I was day trading, like most of my focus was day trading, and I was working part time, and that's while I was in school and like going through that whole phase of my life. Whereas now, as I got a full time job, like I can't sit in front of a screen for 8 hours a day looking for setups, right? Like I don't have that luxury anymore.
Right.
So like I don't day trade as much anymore. I had a little bit at the beginning of the year. I was day trading POW for a little bit. I think I told you about that. The ammo company, very very high beta. Like the stock would move crazy to the upside, crazy to the downside. I made a couple grand on them this year. Nothing crazy with them, but I'm holding them long now. So I got back into them. I like them as a long-term position. I've done a lot of research on them. They were just a company that I found a lot of value in. And now are we deviating from too much, or are we?
No, we're good. Keep going.
So yeah. So like with POW, for example, like they have a really good management company. The company's managed very well. They just bought a website called gunbroker.com, and they just released their earnings on that, and their margins on that website alone are around like 43% as right now.
That's impressive.
Which I think they can scale up.
Yeah, so that's very impressive.
Yeah, so yeah, just that company. That's one of my like I would say like a sleeper company, right? Like it's a company right now that's not terribly big, but they have a lot of room for expansion. They obviously with the new website that they bought. Ammunition's there's a ammunition drought right now, so a lot of people have there's more money to be made on ammunition in the future. They're expanding their facilities. They're building more facilities, so I think that there's good opportunity with them. So I was day trading them originally, and then I was doing more and more research, and now that they had that Gunbroker acquisition, I think that there's more upside potential in them in the future. So added them to the long-term portfolio.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Now, I know you said you're holding them long term, but
Yep.
Going back to the day trading side of things, how long would you plan on holding these trades for? Or did you just kind of say, not really have a time frame in mind? Would you hold it for a day, a couple of hours, a week? What was your, I guess, ideal time frame for these?
Yeah, it all depended. It really depended on what the news was that came out on the company.
Right.
So CGC was a good example. Cannabis Growth Corp I think this was back in 2018, where they had some really big news that came out. And here's the thing. When you're finding these companies, right, I had a pre-market scanner that would go through and look at all the movers in the morning, right? And I would also do my own research in the morning, looking at there's articles on companies that I thought would have some potential of moving to the upside just based on past news. And CGC was a good one. So I woke up around 6 o'clock. I was doing my typical research, looking at the pre-market scanner, and I saw that they were moving in the pre-market. And I was wondering why. So I went in for the day trade. I went in, I put the money in. I made $2,000 in a matter of a minute and a half, just because the volatility. Once the news hit, the news was out, but then the news really started to catch on. More people started to see it. It's a rare situation where it works like that pre-market, and you can get in before other people do, and the stock was just moving that entire morning. So yeah, CGC was a pretty big one. The pre-market scanner was good because it's not, Timothy Sykes, they have all these they have these really good programs where they get information super quick. They have low latency, it gets information in and out really quickly. Whereas Thinkorswim, you're familiar with the platform, obviously, it's good and it does the job. But if you're really somebody who wants to day trade as a job, then you have to invest into these different platforms that really aren't available to the general public. They usually overseas type platforms.
Gotcha.
Which I wasn't that deep into day trading where I was looking to make it a full-time job, right? So
now, what would you recommend that people get into day trading, or would you recommend they stay away from it?
Because
I feel like it's not for everyone.
It's definitely not for everyone. It requires a lot of patience. You have to have a high risk tolerance, right?
Right.
If you come out of a trade and you lose $2,000 to $3,000, you can't be like devastated from that, right? Like psychologically, you have to prepare yourself for situations like that, and just know going into some of these trades that you could get crushed, right? Like it's not going to go perfectly every time, you know.
Right.
Even if you set your 3% loss, right? Sometimes you can get greedy, right? Sometimes you go against what you say, oh no, it's going to go back up.
Can't get that FOMO.
Exactly, right? So I would say for generally most people, like it depends what your goals are. Essentially, like what do you want to do, right? Like if you're looking to, go all in on GameStop and try to make, $20,000, like maybe that's your
stonk.
Yeah, GameStop. GameStop. If that's your goal, then like roll with it, right? Like I don't know, everybody's situation is different. At this point in my life now where I'm at, like most of my stuff is long term. Like I have my dividend portfolio is already laid out. I have all the stocks that I want in there. I have a non-dividend portfolio with all my non-dividend companies. I have obviously my Roth IRA account. I have my employer sponsored Roth IRA account, so I have double Roth, which is nice. But it really depends, man. Like I would say for generally most people, I would probably just go long term, right? And just go into an index fund, right? If you don't know what you're doing, like you're probably going to lose money,
right?
So like if you think that you can be that like maybe top 5% of day traders that make money consistently over and over and over, and they can make a living off of it, which is it's very hard to do.
Yes, I agree.
Then maybe it might be something to explore, but just know that you can really lose a lot of money too.
The big thing, and I think it's possible to be a successful day trader. I definitely think it's possible, but the big thing is, like we were talking about before, people are not going to invest the time required to learn this skill. Right. And if they do learn this skill, then they might get like a little bit complacent. Maybe they just find like one pattern that works well for them. They're not looking like to learn different patterns, like all of that stuff. As opposed to long-term investing, I feel like it's much, much easier because like you said, you can put your money in an index fund. Or if you're picking individual stocks, like if you go down, 10 or 15% on a position, it's not the end of the world because you're holding it for the long term, as opposed to a day trade. If you go down 10 or 15%, you're just like,
what did I just do?
Yeah, exactly.
Especially with a company you don't really care about or want to hold.
Exactly.
For example, like if you didn't set a stop loss order and you have this random pharmaceutical, just going back to the pharmaceutical company, just imagine just some random pharmaceutical company that was like $1.20 a share. Probably no upside really potential in them unless they come up with some groundbreaking drug and like really make the news, and like it's a very rare situation, right? Imagine getting stuck in that with like $20,000 of capital, and you're down like $7,000 on it. You're like, oh, like what do I do now? Like do I sell, take the loss of $7,000? I can write it off on taxes at the end of the year. I think you can write off like $5,000 at the end of the year, right? Do I do that or do I just hold it and hope it goes back up at some point, right? So like you don't want to get stuck in those situations because then you're tying up capital into something or you could sell it and lose the money, right? So like I would say most people, man, just go with the index fund, go long term.
Especially to start, like, and I talked about this in a video that I'm actually posting on Monday. That's the plan right now.
Okay.
It's like, it's one thing to dabble into day trading. Like if you want to take 5% of capital, like say you have $100,000, you want to put $5,000 into day trading and try to learn and experiment. That's one thing. Yeah. If you're taking that entire $100,000 and you're trying to go all in on day trading, that's a little dangerous for so many different reasons. Because first of all, like you said, you might not have any idea what you're doing. And second of all, you're just going to be overwhelmed. Like if you just go all in like that, like I just don't think it's the best idea.
I agree 100%. And the other thing that people think that they can do too is where if me and Evan were doing this for a while, we made a lot of money doing it. Playing the inverse ETFs, right? So you have like, for example, like me and Evan's situation, we're using Gush and Drip, right? So you have like the oil report comes out every Wednesday at 10:30, and that really dictates the flow of if Gush is going to go up or Drip's going to go up, right? Depending on how oil is doing, right? It plays off of derivatives, right? So if you get stuck in that trade and you're like, oh man, like I don't want to sell because like I think it's going to go up tomorrow. The derivatives eat away at the earning potential. The stock is designed to go down to zero, right? Yeah. And then they just do a split, and then they bring the stock price back up, and they do it all over again. So like, there's situations like that where like people don't know what they're playing with, or they're in a company and they're like, oh, derivatives like 3-time ETF, like I get 3 times the money. Yeah, but you can also have 3 times the loss. Plus it's derivatives, so you're obviously losing money on that downside when the derivatives start to eat away at the. So there's all these things that people don't realize going into companies or into day trading into stocks that require more research, and a lot of people don't really have the means of doing it, or don't understand it, or just don't have the time.
Absolutely.
Right.
What were some of your favorite patterns when you were day trading?
Definitely, I love the cup and handle one. It's kind of an obvious one, but it was a fun one to play. Cup and handle, double top, double bottoms. Those are like your typical ones, right? Head and shoulders were good ones to play off of too. I really like the cup and handle though.
Yeah.
That was probably my favorite one to play.
Huh.
Yeah.
Now, what were some of your best days as a day trader?
Best days could be some of the days where you make like $2,000 in like 2 minutes, right? Like, those could be some really good days.
Yeah, then you're done for the day. Like
yeah, but then like you have your next day set up and you're like, oh man, like, all right, let's see what we got today. And like you have nothing that next day, right? Or you lose like $300 that day, right? So like there's all those days. Yeah, I would say I think my funnest trade was Neo, man. Like I really enjoyed trading that stock for a while until it, broke out and it started trading at like $50 a share. Like back when it was around like, that $5 to $10 area, it was a fun stock to trade because you didn't really need a whole lot of capital to make a decent amount of money, and the volatility was there for that company. You want to play the volatility when you're day trading, right? There's no point of playing a company if you have no volatility. Like it's boring. It's not going to do anything. You need the liquidity. You need people in and out of the stock quick. You need something that's trading like, 5, 10, 15 million shares a day, right? So you're in and out quickly. Back in January, going back to Powell, for example, like, the news came out. This is when the Capitol riot happened, and like, obviously they're a gun company, they're an ammunition company, right? So like there was a lot of volatility in the stock in that day, and that thing traded, I think it traded like 8 million shares in that day.
Wow. And
for that company with such a low float, I think it has like 140 million shares outstanding. Like that stock was moving very quickly. You could literally, I think I tossed in like $10,000 just to throw it in for like for the day trade, and like within 3 minutes I made $400, right? So like this
just right off the jump.
You gotta look for these situations. It's hard to find like the right timing, the float, the shares, the setups. Like you'll know when it's right. You'll see it and you'll be able to look at the support and resistance areas. Is it broken out already? Like is it past its all-time high? Right? It has probably more room to run. Like there's all these different things you got to look into, right? And I wouldn't say I'm day trading per se, like now that I'm working full time. But if I see a setup and I'm out like work and I'm like, it looks good and like there's a lot of volume and the volatility is there, then I might throw in a couple grand.
Might as well and see what happens.
Yeah, right. Make a couple. I'm at the point now where like, it doesn't really matter if I lost like a couple $100 or a grand. Like if I had fun doing it, like whatever.
The risk reward's there.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Where is Neo at now? Because I know it ran a lot. I haven't been tracking it, but I know it ran a lot.
Yeah, they just had some news come out about their production because of the chip shortage, right?
Obviously, everyone's getting hit by that.
Yeah, so they're getting more or less screwed on that. So the stock price went down this past week. I think it's right around the $50 area, right?
What does that put at for a market cap? Do you have any idea off the top of your head?
Not off the top of my head. I haven't really been looking into them as much.
I need a tech guy to look that up.
Yeah, right. So, yeah, I'm not sure, but a funny backstory behind Neo too is during the pandemic, a friend of mine, I'm not going to say who it is, but a friend of mine had put in, I think he put in like 20 grand or something right around there into Neo at the bottom at like when it was $2 a share and they were on the verge of going bankrupt because that they got bought out by part of one of the provinces in China. They bought out the company for a percentage, and so he bought into them and risked like 20 grand. That could have went both ways, right? Like he could have got like screwed.
That's probably like 50-50 at best. Like,
right, exactly. And he ended up coming out of that trade. I think he made 100 grand on that trade to the upside. He showed me proof of it and everything. Like
that's crazy.
Like,
good for him.
Yeah, and I was like awesome, man. Like just use that money wisely. Like those trades are like 1 in a million. Like those don't happen. Like that's probably that trade will never happen again in your life.
Yeah.
Like you take that money and you like put in some dividend stocks or like, because he's not a day trader really. He had money to use during the pandemic.
Yeah.
And
he just said YOLO.
That was just one of the trades he made.
It's like Roaring Kitty with GameStop. Just like I like the stock.
Right.
Like,
right.
Why did he buy it? Like what? Did he believe in the company? He was like, I don't know, it looks good.
I don't know the whole backstory, man.
Because like that's the thing. It's like people that make those trades, like that's awesome, good for you, but why did you even think to do that? Because there's not like I just could never. Like,
right. Yeah, it was very risky. I don't know, man. I think that he was just a believer in electric cars, and he thought that Neo had long-term potential. I'm just assuming right now. I don't know. I'm just guessing because I know he was in Xpeng as well. So he was in a couple different electric car makers. So I think his thought was that with the Biden administration coming in, electric cars, like that whole like green movement.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I think that's what his philosophy was, but I'm not 100% sure on that.
Gotcha. All right, so let's move on to investing a little bit here as opposed to the day trading side.
Let's do it.
So like we talked about before, you were really the main driver behind my investing career. And I guess in theory, that's the reason you're sitting here right now and why I'm doing all these things.
Yeah.
But how did you get into it? Like, how did you learn what the stock market was? Like, how did you ultimately decide investing was a good idea?
Yeah, man, just going back. So at the beginning of the podcast here, we were talking about how me and my buddy went to Not Your Average Joe's. We sat down. Like, that really was what kicked off the investing side for me. That day I'll never forget that day at that Not Your Average Joe's, like, changed my perspective of, like, money and how money works. And, like, because I was always a big saver, right? I've always been a pretty frugal person. I've always had money. Like, I've never been without money. And then, that day changed everything. And I started to look into, how to use your money and how to make it work for you and how to invest. And that's what really kicked everything off for me. And then I started, slowly chipping away. I didn't have like the money that I have now, but I had some money to put into the market. And I was like, I'm going to take this percentage of money. I'm going to start to put it into the market and just let it sit there and just see what happens with it. So that's really what got me into it. And I just did more research on it. So it was between I was like 21, 22, and then like a couple of years where I was like in between like jobs and going back to school and like figuring out my entire life. Like I wasn't as heavily into, I would say like contributing to my investments as much, but they were there and like I had the positions, but I wasn't actively like how I am now, like always looking for new positions to invest into and like how can I make my money work for me? Like what's the best way to allocate capital at the moment? So that's really what it came down to. Is just that day with my buddy. Like, I'll never forget it. That's what changed my entire view of how I could make more money for me. So,
how did you view the stock market before that day?
I viewed it as, I really viewed it as like gambling. Like
that's what I've always thought. Like that's how I grew up with that perception. I don't know if anyone told me that. I don't know if anyone put that into my head, but I always thought it was like gambling, dangerous, like don't touch it. And I think even people that don't know me, that I don't want to say don't know me that well, but don't know enough about the stock market. Like I think they're like, oh my God, like he puts money into stocks, like stay away from him. That's dangerous. Like that's basically being addicted to the blackjack table, like,
Right. Which most people would assume that because like they don't know. Like,
they don't know.
They don't know how it works. And I think that I had that perception too, like similar to you, like people always told me it was like legalized gambling, like a way to like just like,
make a quick buck, maybe.
Yeah, and like you just can't listen to people, man. You got to do your own research.
Right? I think that goes with everything, not just the stock market.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. What so you started at 21, right? That was when you first started investing. So what percentage of your portfolio now is, I guess, individual stocks compared to like ETFs and index funds? And what was it when you first started?
Yeah, it's about, at this point, it's about 50-50.
Really?
Yep. So I have my dividend portfolio broken out. I have a good chunk of money in there. Your typical like Apple, Microsoft, AT&T, like those type of companies, right? Just the dividend growth stocks. And then I have my non-dividend portfolio, which makes up a pretty small percentage. I don't have a lot of non-dividend. I like my money to just continue to make money. So like the things that are in my non-dividend portfolio are just growth companies that I like, for example, like a POW, for example, or a company like Sonos, right? Like they just had a huge litigation win over Google for patent infringement. Now they're going to be getting, I think it's like $40 million on an annualized basis. Right around that, some right around that number, because Google used some of the patents in their Google Home systems, right? So like companies like that, like I look into companies that have potential in the future to just continue to be winners, right? Like where are they set up to be in the future? But going back to your question, so it's about 50-50 at this point, right? I have my dividend portfolio, non-dividend portfolio, Roth account, which I contribute $6,000 every year to. I've been doing $6,000 for the last.
There's no reason not to. Even if you can't contribute $6,000, I don't understand why you wouldn't open one. Like there's legitimately no reason why not. Like,
100% agree with you.
I'm waiting for the day that someone provides a reason to me why they should not open a Roth. Like even if you can only contribute $100
Right.
a year. Like, legitimately give me one reason. And if anyone's watching this and you have a reason, comment down below, because I would love to hear the reason.
Right, and even if it's not, for example, like a Roth, right? You're expecting your earnings potential in the future to be higher than it is now.
Exactly.
Right? So like even if you don't want to go down the Roth, you don't think you're going to be making more money in the future, which I hope you would think you would be making more money in the future, then you could go with the traditional just IRA, right?
Yeah.
You know, like either way, you should have one of the other.
Yeah.
Right? You know, so going back to the Roth, $6,000 a year. I've been doing that for the past like 4 or 5 years now. I always put the $6,000 in. And then the rest is in my employer-sponsored 401k. So just I have the luxury of having a Roth 401k, which is really nice.
That's nice.
It's super nice. So I have 2 of them.
I'm jealous.
And I contribute, I think I do like 12% of my pay to that, and then my employer matches that. So you know, yeah, it's been going good. So it's about 50-50 at this point right now. So but it's probably going to change. I want to continue contributing to the Roth. Like the $6,000 a year is my number one priority every year, is just to do the $6,000 to the Roth.
Of course.
And I have 3 funds in it at the moment. I have an international fund, which I recently added this year. I have FBGRX, which is a growth mutual fund. I know mutual funds, everybody's like, oh, expenses, they're expensive. Like most of the time, mutual funds aren't probably in your best interest. With this scenario, right, it's a Roth, right? So you're not getting taxed on that. I actually just got paid out a dividend on them yesterday. It was like $1,300. It's based on the turnover of the fund, how often the fund turns over. They pay out to investors. Last year I got $400. So this year, obviously it's been a really good year for the stock market, so the turnover is higher. So, you know, I had a $1,300 dividend payment come in. So like, that's not taxed. It's in the Roth long term. So I have a mutual fund, and I also have just your typical S&P index fund. It's FNILX, and it's a zero expense fund through Fidelity. I have all my funds through Fidelity besides my employer-sponsored fund, and been doing very, very well for me. So
yeah,
I think of it as the individual stocks are a way for me to just have capital be allocated and just to grow that over the long term. Most of those companies that I have in my dividend portfolio are up 20+%. I have a company like Nvidia, for example. I'm buku on them. I'm up like 190%. It's retarded. And I absolutely love Nvidia, and I think that they're going to be the AI leader in the future. Continue to be the AI leader in the future, and just a lot of potential there for them. I think they'll eventually be over $1,000 a share, like at some point. Even though they just did their stock split, like they're going to continue to just dominate. Like them. AMD is another position I have in my non-dividend growth or my non-dividend portfolio. So. I know we're getting a little sidetracked here, but
we're good.
Yeah.
That's one of my bigger regrets. I bought AMD. Oh my God. I was telling Nick this the other day. I can't remember what it was. I bought AMD at like, it was under $20. Like I think it might have been under 15. Like I bought it. This was back in, oh man, it might have been 2018.
Okay.
Like late 2018, I bought it. And I don't know why I sold it. I can't remember, but that's one of my biggest regrets.
How many shares did you have?
Not a lot. Like this was very early on. Like I might have had like, I don't know, maybe 100 shares. Like it really wasn't that much at all.
Yeah.
Let's see. What's another regret I have?
It's so tough. I look back at trades too, and I'm like, oh man, I shouldn't have sold that.
I bought Tesla. I had like 20 shares of Tesla.
Like you told me that.
Yeah, like $200, and I sold out like at like 220. Like, but hey, I don't regret it. And like I've said this before, because now I've learned, like, all right, before I do something like that and sell, like, what's the company doing? Like, keep up with the company, make sure like this is actually a good decision to sell this stock.
Right.
And plus, I feel like I don't think I'd have this mindset, but if it had to like run like it did and I had held on, I would have been like, well, this can happen with every stock.
Right.
Like, I don't think I would have that mindset, because I think I'm not that, I don't want to say ignorant, but I'm a little bit more knowledgeable than, you know, people that just made a bunch of money off Dogecoin or GameStop or AMC.
Right.
But still, I learned a very valuable lesson. I think that's going to stick with me more for the rest of my life, rather than like, you know, like the $100,000 I would have made or whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah.
And what are your thoughts on like the Dogecoin, the AMC, and like, would you ever dabble in those, or do you think like that's just like out of your risk tolerance?
No. The only way I would even consider doing it is I threw like, you know, like $1,000 into it and just said like, I'm just gonna hold, and whatever happens happens.
Right.
Like, and not pay any attention to anything else, and just say full on YOLO. Like, as opposed to trying to like trade it or like invest in the company or like any of those meme stocks. Like, no, I don't think so. Right. I do think AMC was an intriguing spec play, because there was some when it was $5, there was some interesting things going on at the company. Like they raised a lot of money, like the world is opening back up. So there were some interesting things about it. But again, that would just be like a YOLO play for me. Obviously, that would have worked out for me if I had to put money into it. But
You can always look at it that way. Though.
yeah. What about you? What do you think about it? Because I know you bought GameStop.
Yeah. And it was more or less a fun thing, right? It was nothing like it was
see what happens.
It was fun.
Like,
it was just like I said before in the beginning of the issue. It was money that like if I lost it, I wouldn't be mad if it went to zero, right? It was just something fun to do. I wanted to get on the hype. Like everybody was doing it. We had a whole group chat going. Like all our buddies were in it. I was like, you know what, whatever, throw some money in. Like another big deal. No, but they did have some interesting news come out between GameStop and AMC that they were thinking about having like using the theaters as like a collaborative like gaming environment where you could go and you could game with other people in like a theater.
that's interesting.
Which is pretty cool. I don't know if the news is like 100% verified, but that was some things I was reading about it. That would be an interesting concept, right? Like I would think that would be pretty cool, and I don't know if it would be a big revenue generator for them, but could be a cool partnership.
I wouldn't be surprised if like Amazon bought out AMC. That would not surprise me. I saw this the other day. I can't remember off the top of my head. Really gonna kick myself. Amazon's the leader to acquire someone. I don't think it was AMC, but it was something that like didn't surprise me at all.
Oh, are you talking about like the malls? Like they were gonna acquire the malls and use them as like distribution centers, or like
that was
end
it.
caps of malls? No,
I don't think that was it. I can't remember. I'll have to look it up after this, but I saw it and I was not surprised by it at all. I can't. That's really gonna bother me. I can't remember what it was.
Well, right now capital's so cheap.
That's what I mean.
So
like you
so
can
much
get money
M&A.
like whenever you want. Like you're just like, I need money, and they're like, here, take it, please. Like, take my money.
Do something with it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's so funny.
Did you ever buy AMC or Dogecoin?
No.
Dogecoin, I think that one's like that's like the most full YOLO out of all of them. I feel like
Coins in general are just risky, right?
I really like Bitcoin. I really like Ethereum.
Yep.
Do you own them?
I own Bitcoin.
Do you?
I used to own Ethereum. So when that I kind of kicked myself. I owned 2 Ethereum, and I sold them out when that huge dip happened in crypto, where like there was all this like FCC news and everything came out and everything like plummeted. I was like,
You sold at a loss?
no, I basically broke even on it, so I sold out of it. I was in Ethereum around like $2,000. Now it's at like, what is it, 3,400, something like that, right?
Yeah.
But no, I kept my Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin has long-term potential still.
I think Bitcoin, that's going to be around for a while, especially because you're seeing a lot of like athletes starting to take payments in Bitcoin, which I think is very unique.
Yeah.
Ethereum, I just like because that guy's literally worked on it his entire life. Yeah. Like it's just, if you put that much effort into something, I feel like it's hard not to bet on it at the end of the day. But I like Bitcoin the most. I do think that one's going to stay, but I don't know. There's something about it. I just can't, for some reason can't buy. Maybe it's a comfort zone thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
But for some reason, I just can't get myself to click buy. I think it just comes down to, I think I can make better money elsewhere, but at a certain point, it probably is going to make sense for me to buy into Bitcoin.
Right.
Because I kind of look at Bitcoin like, I kind of look at it like, not like an S&P 500, because that's definitely the safer play.
Right.
But I feel like it's going to be something that over, like if you look back, like, you know, over a 10, 20, 30 year chart, it's going to be like up.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? That's like, I don't see it going away anytime soon.
No, I definitely don't either. And even with Ethereum too, like Ethereum and Cardano, like they ride like on the backs of each other, and like Cardano is used within Ethereum. So there's all these, like, I'm not a blockchain expert, I'm not a crypto expert, but like I've done some research on these different coins, and I think definitely Bitcoin and Ethereum have like the most upside potential, in Cardano, if Ethereum does continue to go up, would ride the back of Ethereum. So yeah, man, like I have a very small percentage of my portfolio allocated to Bitcoin. It's probably around like 2%, 3%, right around there.
That's probably what I would do.
Yeah, nothing crazy, but I want to be there if upside's there. I want to be in it.
Yeah, right. That's especially like, maybe you have like smaller amounts of money, but like at a certain point, like once you get like, a few $100,000 on the market, it's like you might as well put, $10,000 into a coin and just if you see the upside and like diversify a little bit at the very least.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Like you get to the point where like you have like, you're probably in the same position where you have like your portfolio built out, like your core positions built. You have your core funds built out. You have everything like pretty much there for you, right? And then it comes to the point like, where can you put some money to make some more money, like allocate some more money to other places. For example, like an HSA account. Like a lot of people don't know the benefits of an HSA account.
A lot of people don't know what that is.
Don't even know what an HSA is, exactly. So it's a health savings account, right? And a health savings account it's better than a Roth in the fact that the money goes in, it's not taxed. The money that you use for qualified health expenses isn't taxed, and then the money at retirement isn't taxed. So it's a triple tax advantage account,
right?
And you can contribute around $3,500 a year, I think, for individuals and $7,500 for a family. It makes no sense because you can, once you hit, I think it's $1,000 mark in that HSA, you can start to invest that money in like an S&P, in an international fund, or whatever you want to invest it into, not individual stocks, but the different funds that your employer would, offer for you. It makes no sense. Like, take advantage of that.
You might, yeah, that's the thing. Like that, like another stupid thing I hear people do all the time is they won't take the employer match on their 401k. I'm like, you're literally throwing money into a fire pit.
Free.
Like, I'm just like there's some people I know, like we'll say like the employer matches up to 5% and they put 2.5% in. I'm like, all right, if you are struggling that much where you need that money to feed your family, I get it.
Yeah.
Like, if that makes that much of a difference, all right. To each its own, I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
But if you're just putting that money in your savings account, like, stop being a potato.
Right.
Like, I legitimately don't understand like why you are not taking that employer match. Like, the company's like, we will pay you if you want it, and you're like, no, I'm all set.
I don't like free money.
Yeah. Yeah, right.
Free money? I don't want that.
What getting back on track here, what are some of your favorite stocks right now? I know you mentioned Powell, but what else?
Favorite stocks right now, definitely, all right, Powell for sure, Sonos for sure. I'm hoping, like, this is my long-term goals with Sonos is I hope that they get bought out, right, at some point, and that would be like ideal situation. Right now they have so many patents, so like any company that has smart speakers is probably going to have to use some of Sonos patents for their speakers, right? It's inevitable. So I like them. Obviously, your AMD, like, Affirm's a really nice company. Like, there's a lot of companies that I like that I'm not invested into. I think that the market, like, the PEs is extremely high. Like, the market's at like a very high point right now. And you can say that at any point, right? Nobody can time the market. But I haven't been allocating a lot of money to individual stocks at the moment. I've just been really contributing to my long-term, like, S&P 500. Like, right, nothing. I haven't been like buying really any of these dips in these. These have been very small dips, right? I'm looking for like a nice 10-15% correction. It's probably going to come by the end of this year. Like, it's inevitable. We haven't had that big of a dip this year, and usually they come every couple months, right?
Yeah.
So I'm waiting for something like that. I haven't been putting a lot of money to work at the moment. I've been holding a lot of cash, but I have been just like chipping away at my ETFs and just adding a little bit there, here and there, but nothing too crazy. So.
I went down a rabbit hole the other day, and I ended up going on Yardini Research, and I saw that actually the small caps are very, very undervalued right now. Like, they've been like very beaten down. Like, their forward PEs are actually like some of the lowest they've ever been. Like, large caps looking more towards the overvalued side. I would say actually, if you said they were fairly valued, like, okay, I understand, but the more I look into it, the more I think they're kind of in between fairly valued and overvalued. Mid caps are kind of the same, not as like overvalued, but still like fairly valued, overvalued. But small caps, that's where I've been putting a lot of capital because they're like very beaten down. And I'm kind of like thinking, how much lower can they possibly go? Like, there's like one stock I've been buying for probably like almost a year now, Corsair. Like, the forward PE is like 12.
Right.
Like, and that company has so much growth ahead of it. It's just like, I don't even understand how like that stock can go any lower. Like, you know, I'm like, what's the stock going to go to? Like $18? Like, that's just not, maybe it will if it does, great. I'll buy more shares, but I just feel like it can't go that much lower. Right.
And you got a good point there, right? But it comes to the point where you have so many positions in your, like, I have like 28 positions, right?
Oh my God, stop. You stress me out.
And you only can manage so many positions, right?
Yeah.
So I don't want to be putting more money into more companies where then I have to do more research and more due diligence and continue to keep up with all the company and the earnings and everything that's going on. It comes to a point where like you have too many and it's too much to manage where you're probably more risk of losing money if you continue to branch out to more companies. So,
well, at certain points also, like, why don't you just put your money in an index fund when you buy too many?
It's exactly, it's tough, man. Like, I feel I'm in a comfortable spot with the positions that I have. Another company that I like is Endeavor Group, if you're familiar with them. So they're like UFC. They have,
Gotcha.
They're like a holdings company, right? I just like it because UFC, right? They're not profitable yet, but throw a couple $100 in them, right? And it keeps me engaged with the sport of UFC because I like UFC a lot, and I know you do Brazilian jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, I just started actually. I've been taking some private lessons. I took one this morning. It really kicked my ass.
That's sick.
But,
Where are you taking those?
I'm taking in Pawtucket. My friend Matt, he has lessons. I might sign up there in the wintertime.
Okay.
And take some classes.
What's the place name?
Santos.
Okay.
I might sign up there in the wintertime because I don't play a lot of golf in the winter. I still play sometimes. I play probably more than most people, but I don't play like a ton. It's not high on my priority list. It's kind of like, all right, I got nothing to do today. I'm caught up on everything. Let me go, play 9 holes. It's not that cold.
Right.
But I think it'd be kind of cool to sign up and take classes. The idea of competing intrigues me. I don't know if I would do it, but that's probably because I'm also like newer. It's like early on in my jiu-jitsu career per se. But the idea of, I don't know, the idea of rolling around with some guys, I like that idea.
Yeah.
Plus it's like, it does a lot for your confidence because like I could like get out of this chair right now and I could kind of like literally just sit on top of you and that wouldn't be comfortable.
Right.
It like that's basically what jiu-jitsu is. It's like my goal is to strangle you.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
so it like does a ton for your confidence, and plus nothing ever goes wrong with learning self-defense either.
Exactly.
Like it's like if some guy comes up to me at like a bar or like some guy for some reason just comes at me, it's good to know that I can defend myself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, which is a big thing. Like I've been in like doing MMA, like MMA workouts, and
Intense, right?
it's so fun, man. I love it. Like we're gonna get a little sidetracked here, but we went from like powerlifting, right, where it's like mundane, going to the gym, workout,
I don't miss
squat,
it at all.
bench, deadlift. Like, I don't really either, and I still lift heavy. Like I still go into the gym and I still deadlift like heavy. I still squat, but I'm not like on a regiment. Like
Right.
I like to be strong. And I think powerlifting has translated over to every other aspect of my life as far as like translates over to obviously MMA, like being able to strike hard, right? Like
Right.
it's very good, but I'm not on like the same trajectory where like I want to compete in powerlifting, right? And the reason why, like, so some of the company bouncing a little around here, but some of the companies that I own, right? I own them because I like to watch what that is doing, right? Like I like Apple, I use an iPhone, right? I like Endeavor Group because they're UFC, right? They're a holdings company. They have UFC in their holdings. So like the companies that I invest in are companies that I'm generally interested in. And obviously like, I think that they're going to do well in the future. I don't own a lot of companies that are just like companies that I don't really watch or care about, right? Like it doesn't make sense to me. So most of the companies that I own are just companies that I generally enjoy following, right? Looking at the news for them, right? Like Corsair, for example. Like I don't know anything about that company.
It's a gaming company. Like,
Right,
do you know
okay.
what Logitech is?
Yeah.
So Corsair is basically, to really summarize it in a nutshell, Corsair is essentially a smaller version of Logitech, like an earlier Logitech.
Got it.
Like the company went public, I think last year at some point. Like it's a newly public company, but yeah, I like it a lot. I think it has a lot of growth. I think it can be as big as Logitech one day.
Okay.
So yeah, I think it has a lot of upside. And plus, in that market, there's like Razer, Logitech, and Corsair, and those three are going to make up the majority of the market share.
Right.
So I think even if you bought Logitech, I think that would be a pretty solid buy. I'm not sure exactly where that market cap is right now, but I'm pretty sure their forward PE is still pretty low. Not as low as Corsair's, because Logitech has a much higher market cap. It's more in like the 20 billion range.
Right.
Corsair has like a $3 billion market cap. Like I think it's less than that. It might be like 2.5.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like Corsair. I think it has a lot of upside. Risk reward's very attractive to me.
Now, is this a company you would hold like super long term, or how many companies in total do you have in your entire portfolio at the moment? And is this a company you would think you'd want to hold long term, or is this kind of just something you're playing for a little while and then you're going to sell it?
Definitely a long-term hold.
Okay.
I don't do any short-term trading. I don't do anything like that.
Yep.
Because I don't, with everything I'm doing, I don't have the time to, I guess, keep up with the short-term stuff. I don't, I know that people have great success with it. I haven't had great success with it. I don't necessarily like it. So this is definitely a company I want to hold long-term.
Right.
What was your other question? I completely forgot.
That's all right. How many companies do you have total in your portfolio?
I think not a lot. I think maybe like 7.
Okay, yeah. So like manageable.
I'm thinking about adding an 8th one.
Okay.
I don't know what it's going to be, but I've really, like Jeremy was talking about, he's been talking about this a lot. He's really interested in honest company. Like, so I'm like, I don't know a ton about it. I don't know what it is. I just know he's been talking about it a lot. So I'm like, all right, let me look and see if there's something there.
Right.
Because like when he's really adamant about his stock, I'll like look into it. I don't always agree with him, but I look into it because it's like, all right, he's had great success. Let me at least take a look at it.
Right.
And like make sure I'm not missing anything. And sometimes I look at it and I'm like, I don't think it's there.
Right.
But then sometimes I look at it and I'm like, all right, I can see it. And then sometimes I look at it and I'm like, I love it.
Right.
So kind of like I do with everyone, like the same thing with you when you were like, look into, I don't know, there's been tons of companies you told me to look into. Some I like, some I don't like.
No, to each their own. That's the thing too. Like everybody's different about what companies they want to invest into, right? And I truly believe you have to have some interest in the company to want to like invest in them and to continue to do the research and make sure that it aligns with your long-term strategy.
Right.
I'm not going to invest into a pharmaceutical company that I don't care about, right? Like long-term. Like I was
just about to use that as an example.
I would have no interest in that. Even if the company was great, everything lined up perfectly.
It's boring.
I wouldn't want, I wouldn't want
at the
my
end of
money.
the day.
Yeah.
Now, how do you decide where you think a stock price is going to go over time? How do you project that?
Obviously, just looking looking right? Top and bottom line, looking at the financials, watching the earnings, seeing what a big thing is management for me. I love looking into the management company, like who's managing this company, where are they going to bring this company in the future? Do they seem like they're on the right track, right? And just following the earnings, looking at the reports, obviously looking at the EBITDA, like all these different things that go into it, how much net income they're bringing in, multiples, like there's all these different things, and that really plays into most of my investment for the long term. Obviously you have like your dividend companies where those are, your Apples, Microsofts, all those you can kind of more or less dollar cost average over a long term. But any of my like non-dividend like growth companies, those are really what I look into. And that's why I don't have too many of those, because they're a lot to manage, right? You have to make sure that the management is living up to what they told you they're going to do. Like you have to be on the earnings calls. You have to be looking at the financials consistently. And like one person can only do that with a full-time job and like all the other responsibilities you have in your life, right? So like, those are some of the things I look into. And I recently started the non-dividend portfolio. So it's, I think this past year and a half, I've really started to like add more positions to it. Those are some of the things. I have Palantir in there too.
Do you?
I do like Palantir. I do like Palantir.
That's one of those companies that it's on my list to look into, but I feel like it's going to take me. I'm honestly just being really lazy about it. Like I feel like it's going to take me so long to really wrap my head around it. I'm like, let me put it off a little bit longer. But everything I've looked into, like the basic company profile. Like I've talked to a lot of people about it, and from just based off of that, granted I haven't done any serious due diligence yet. It seems like there's something there, but I'm just like, a lot of brain power. I'm just kidding. Yeah.
So really what they have to do at this point, right, is they have a lot of government contracts, and they're reliant on a lot of the government contracts for their long-term, obviously, earnings. They just recently had a partnership with IBM where they acquired some of their salespeople to build their commercial business.
I did see that.
So that's really what they need to work on, right? Everything else is there, right? They have like the software. Their software has been used by the government. It's like very user-friendly, no-code, low-code type of software, which is, attractive to a lot of companies. You don't have to have, programmers that know how to program with the software. It's more or less like out of the box, like you can kind of use most of the stuff, right? You can obviously do coding within the software and you can do other things. But I think at this point, right, it's definitely in my long-term. It's something I'm holding long-term. I think that it's there, and they just need to continue to build out the business and get more of the commercial customers in. Because once you have the customers in, they're using it and they're in that environment, it's hard to break out of that, right? So I think they just have to kind of continue to get the salespeople to continue selling the product and start to build that side of the business. So I think it's there, man. It's just a matter of when,
Right. Now, kind of like talking about the management team, like you said before, I feel like that's one of the most important things in picking individual stocks that people don't get enough attention. And it's a little hard, I feel like, because that really comes down to like learning a lot about psychology. Because obviously if you look into the management team, there's not going to be any CEO that's going to be like, oh, we believe our company is going to go bankrupt in 3 years. Like, and if they do say that, then you have your answer right there. But you really have to learn to read between the lines and really learn, like, okay, like what's his body language look like? How is he saying this thing? Does he sound super passionate about it? Like those type of things.
Right. Very good point there. And that's wicked funny you said that, because when I was looking into PAL, right, I was going through all of their like interview videos, like where the CEO was talking, right? And you can tell a lot by body language of somebody. I'm very good at like reading people and like kind of distinguishing like if they're lying or if they're like there's something missing there, right? And that was one thing when I was looking into the management company. I was looking into like the various things that they were doing. to see like, the corporate body language, right? Like how are they responding to questions? Like, what do they think about this? Or like, these are like outside research that you have to do aside from just looking at a balance sheet, right? And like looking at like the earnings and, listening to an earnings call, right? You only can tell so much information from that. So like, especially with these smaller caps, those are like very big things you want to look into. It's like looking into the actual interviews with CEOs and with the, executive, the executives of the company, and seeing like how they respond to those different things. So.
Yeah. And a lot of things in the stock market in general, like, and this is like probably the reason it deters so many people away from it. Mm-hmm. A lot of things are just come with experience or are like based off of feel.
Right.
Like when you project like revenue numbers or net income numbers for like 3 years out, like there's no Google spreadsheet. There's no like, master key that's going to say like Apple's going to do this much of net income next year and this much the year after. Like it's literally just what you believe and what you feel based off of all that research you've done. Mm-hmm. And it's the same thing with the management team. Like you feel like the CEO has, his head on straight. You feel like the CEO knows what he's doing. You feel like the COO is a really good person, but there's no like answer that you can Google that's going to give that to you. It's basically all that you believe in your research.
Right. And which was a big thing too. Like, you could do all the research in the world, right? And it could go completely south on you. Like, if everybody could just do the research and know what's going to happen, everybody'd be rich, right? Nobody knows long-term exactly what's going to happen for a company. But if you can do the due diligence and the research and make an informed decision based on everything that you've looked into and you think that it's there, then, go for it. That's what the stock market is. It's, you're going to risk a little and maybe make a little, maybe lose a little. It's just part of the game.
That's the thing. And going back to the risk part of it, I had a friend, and I feel like this is what most people think. Like I had a friend, very good friend of mine. Mm-hmm. She said, in my mind, the stock market's gambling. And I said, well, yes, but you also have to remember keeping your money in cash is probably a bigger gamble because you're 100% going to lose money. And she's like, well, what happens if everything goes wrong? You lose all the money that you put into stocks. I'm like, well, there's a chance of that happening, a chance.
Right.
But if you do that and just keep all your money in cash, there's a 100% chance of that happening.
Yep. Great point.
Which is, it just like blows my mind that people don't understand that. For some reason, like society has preached that a savings account is the best place for your money. And it's really like the opposite. It is the worst place for your money. Obviously, you got to have some capital around for a lot of reasons, like bills, expenses, like emergency fund, like stuff like that. Yeah. But there's no reason that you should be keeping like, what, depending on your net worth, like if you have a net worth of say $100,000 and you have like 90 grand in cash, like there's no reason that you should be keeping all 90 grand of that in cash.
Right.
Like by any means at all.
100% agree.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like people do not realize that inflation, especially now with what inflation is right now, it's just eating away at your money.
Literally.
Consistently. Like every single day, it's like eating away at your money, right? Your money is just losing value.
And the thing is, people realize it and they just don't do anything about it.
Oh, they don't care.
Like, they don't care. They're like ignorant to the fact. Like I was over someone's house a while ago and their mom was like, oh my God, I remember like they went grocery shopping and the grocery bill was, I don't remember, let's say it was $300.
Right.
She was like, oh, I remember when we only had to pay like $100 for this. And I'm just like, well, I think that's a pretty good indicator of how society works and what you should be doing with your money, but no, just, right over their head. And there's nothing wrong with that. It doesn't make them a bad person at all. Like, hopefully they're not watching this and they didn't see that, but they probably they won't remember that. They won't know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But, that's the point. Like you need to like take action and do something and not just like sit there and, essentially fall victim to inflation. Like,
right. Now, let me ask you a question. Do you think inflation is transitory as of right now? Or do you think, what are your thoughts on that? Like, do you think it's transitory? Do you think it's going to go back? Like,
it's tough, dude. Honestly, that's very hard to answer. I
have my opinion on it, so I just want to see like what you think.
I don't really have an opinion, to be honest. I don't think we'll see like this like rate of inflation we've been seeing like forever and ever. Dude, honestly, I don't know. That's the thing. I'm like completely down. I've thought about this a lot and I'm like completely down the middle. I could see it dipping. I could see it, keep seeing hyperinflation. I literally have, you kind of stumped me. I can't sway one way or the other, to be perfectly honest with you.
My thoughts are, right, like, I don't think it's transitory. I think some of it could be transitory, right? Some aspects of what we're seeing in inflation could be transitory. For example, like gas prices could be transitory.
Right.
Some increased costs in food could be possibly transitory. But here's the thing, right? You can't give I guess you could in a contract, but you can't give somebody a temporary wage increase, right?
Yeah.
So what does that mean, right? That means that
That's fair.
if you have to pay a McDonald's employee $20 an hour, just saying, right? If it's $20 an hour, they can no longer afford to charge you 99 cents for a McChicken or right?
By default, yeah.
Because they have to spend more money on employees. It just trickles down to the bottom line, right? So like, I think maybe some aspects of it are transitory, but I think a lot of it isn't.
Right.
That's what I'm thinking. No, I don't think anybody really knows, right?
Nobody knows.
Nobody really knows, right? But that's just my thoughts on it, right?
It's interesting how long all of these companies are going to be hiring for too. Like, cause we walk off the street right now, we could walk down my road. Literally, we're going to see dozens of hiring signs, like dozens, like everyone is hiring.
Right.
Obviously with the unemployment going away very soon and that whole fiasco, which probably is not the best thing to get into, but with that going away, then you're probably going to see a lot of people like going back to work finally. So it's going to be interesting to see how that affects everything and what happens from there.
I agree 100%. Because a big thing is like, nobody can find help.
That's the thing. Like nobody.
And just think of it like this. If you're an employer, you're going in with this applicant that has this huge gap in employment. And you're like, okay, like, what were you doing?
What have you been doing the last year and a half?
Like, you're not working. So like, it just shows a bad character on somebody if you come in with that huge gap in unemployment. Right. I don't know. That's kind of what I think about it.
Yeah, maybe some of those people have a good reason, but obviously the majority of people are just like, yeah, I've just been Netflixing it up. You know, I've been Netflixing, chilling by myself.
Or day trading at home.
Yeah, day trade, losing a lot of money. Anyway, let's get back on track here.
Yep.
Let's talk about your YouTube channel because a lot of people might not know this, but you have a YouTube channel.
Yep.
You've had several YouTube channels in the past. So why did you ultimately get back into YouTube many, many years ago?
Well,
or get into YouTube rather, not back into YouTube.
Yeah, originally I got into YouTube. It was just a way to post videos, right? I did it for fun. Me and my friends in the day would just make like stupid like comedy videos of us like just doing dumb things, and that was like first how I got on YouTube, I would say. And then after that, I got into like technology review videos,
right?
And like that at the time, there was nobody doing it. Nobody. It was like me, John 4 Lakers, or better known as like Techno Buffalo. He sold. I think his whole thing now is like he's back to John 4 Lakers, but he ended up branching out from he had a website called Techno Buffalo where he'd post like he had a whole crew of people, but I think he went back to his roots and now he's just doing John 4 Lakers. But it was me, him, Marcus Brownlee. Obviously, you probably know who Marcus Brownlee is, right?
I've heard of him, yeah.
Huge YouTuber, multimillionaire, like hugely successful. Did interviews with Elon, like very, very smart kid. At the time, like I was just on YouTube. I was just posting review videos, right? I was just like, oh, like this is my iPod Touch at the time, like. Let's do a review on it. Like, let's just tell people how I feel about it. And it was just something fun to do. And I like technology, and I was always into technology, and always had like computer. And you know, back in the MySpace days where you had like the JavaScript and you would like code out your like MySpace page and make it like tricked out. Like, yeah, I was one of those. So like, yeah, I was just always interested in technology. So I got into it there, and then the channel just started just getting more views. More people came onto it. This is back when you could like add a friend on YouTube, right? Like that's not a thing anymore.
Wow, I didn't even know that was a thing. That's how long ago that was.
Yeah. So, so I started doing that, and then I started taking off, and then I think it was 2009 or 10. YouTube introduced the partner program, where you could sign up and you could basically just make money off YouTube. Basically, what it is now, like make money off the ad revenue. So I asked my mom to. At the time, I wasn't old enough. I asked my mom to like sign for me on it, like to like she would be like the account holder, I guess, right? And the money would go in her bank account, and then she would give it to me. But so that really kicked things off. I was a couple of thousand subscribers at the time, built it up. I was using this is where the whole YouTube thing like kind of fell off for a little bit. So I was using a marketing application called Tube Blaster Pro, right? And the whole idea at the time was with Tube Blaster Pro was it would help you market your channel to other people that would be interested in your channel, right?
Okay.
So I would go, for example, like Marcus Brownlee or like John 4 Lakers or like these other there was other technology channels, right? Just these were like the bigger ones at the time. And I would go to them and I'd be like, hey, like your viewers are probably like my videos. So like, hey, come check out my content. Like, and that was how I helped like grow the channel, like build it out quicker, right?
How would they be notified of that? Would it be like an email, or was there like did you go comment on their comments? Like, or...
So you could send messages back then, right?
Okay.
So you'd add them as a friend. So it would go in, add them as a friend, and then send a message like, hey, like, I see that you're interested in John for Lakers content. Like, I do similar type of review videos. Like, come check out my channel. Like,
and it was all automatic?
yeah, it was on a schedule, right? So
Gotcha.
I'd go to school. Like, I was like in 7th or 8th grade, whatever it was at the time. And I would put it on for the day. They had like a free version where you could send like 200 messages a day. And then the unlimited one was like, you could send unlimited messages to people. And it was on like a timer. And that would do that. So it would send out all the messages during the day, come home. I would see like all the new people that came on, like they'd come to my channel, check it out. Like it was a great way. I built my channel up to, I think at the point it was like 50,000 subscribers.
Wow.
And I remember me and John for Lakers were at a point where we were like at the same like subscriber count.
That was a lot back then, 50,000 subscribers.
Yes,
because Max was telling me when I had him on the podcast that, you might have said this off air, but he was saying that when he met Nick had like 30,000 subscribers back in, whatever it was, 2010, 2011. And that meant something back then. That was like, wow, 30,000. Now you see 30,000. You're like, oh, he's doing all right.
Yeah, it's an all right channel.
Yeah.
Small channel.
Like anything under like 100 grand. It's like, oh, all right.
It's whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing crazy.
So, wow, that's crazy that you had 50,000 subs back then at the age of like 12.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. It was insane to me. And I'll never forget it. Like I said, I was at the point where me and John for Lakers, who is now is like multimillionaire, like crazy, like he's got his whole business built out, that we were at the same point. And the reason why I don't have that channel anymore is because that was against the community guidelines. Like I didn't know at the time. I was like 12, right? Like I didn't know.
You don't read the fine print.
Yeah.
Like why would you?
Yeah, exactly. I don't even, my mom signed me up for the partner program. So like I didn't know anything about any of that. So I was like, okay, like Two Blaster Pro, way to make my channel bigger, help me grow my audience. Why not? Like it sounds like a great idea. And it was against community guidelines. So YouTube ended up suspending my channel, which I'll never forget the day I woke up in the morning. My mom came in my room. It was like 4 a.m. and she's like, what happened to your channel? What happened to your channel? Like, and it like woke me out of a dead sleep. Like woke up and I was like, I went on my computer to go and it said, your account has been suspended for violating the community guidelines. And I reached out to YouTube, like consistently, like trying to get my videos back because I didn't have them backed up at the time because I didn't think I needed to back up my videos. I would just make them at the time, like hard drive space was like expensive to like have external hard drives and all that, because
especially at the age of 12,
right? Yeah, with like no income. So like I'm like, oh, like trying to email YouTube, trying to get my videos back and try to get my channel back up and going. I told them like I didn't know about like the community guidelines, so you couldn't do that, and like no response from YouTube. You had no customer service. It's kind of like Coinbase, right? You can't get a hold of anybody, right, for the life of you. So that was the end of that. Then in 2011 and 12, so here's the thing with the YouTube partner thing. You could link multiple accounts with your YouTube account. So I had my original channel name was Dave to Man Production. No idea where I came up with that name, but Dave to Man Production was my name. But I had another account called Dave the Man Production, and it was linked to that partner program account. It was just a sub account from my other account, and that one didn't get suspended. So that one still had partner eligibility on it, so I could still make money with that account. But it was just sitting. It was just dormant. I didn't really do anything with it. It was just like there. It didn't have any videos. 2011 and 12 is when I was in a phase of my life where I was like really into like hip hop music and like finding new artists, and like, you know, that was kind of what I was into at the time. So you had like your websites like DatPiff and like hotnewhiphop.com. I don't know if you knew what any of these are, but
DatPiff I know.
Yeah.
So I do know what Hot New Hip Hop is. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a long time. I can't remember the last time I typed in that URL, but
right, me either. So long ago. So at that time, really there wasn't a big presence of like mixtapes on YouTube. So I was like, okay, like Mac Miller, like Wiz Khalifa at the time were like the big artists, like those were like the guys at the time. I was like, all right, let me take their mixtapes, post them on YouTube so people can listen to them outside of like DatPiff or like downloading it, right? Just a way to stream these songs on YouTube. And I did that for a little while. That was obviously copyright, like infringement, which, I mean, it is what it is. Like,
it's what likes life when you're in middle school. You don't know any of these things.
You don't know any of this stuff. I'm just like, okay, like what's the next thing I can do? Like, what am I into right now that I can put on
what
YouTube?
else can I screw up?
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. So that was very lucrative, to be honest with you. Like those videos were getting like Wiz Khalifa's Cabin Fever mixtape was like the mixtape at the time. And
oh, I remember that. That was so good. I love that.
It was so
I still listen to some songs on that album.
Yep. So you had you had all those like songs on YouTube, and like people were like loving it. They wanted to like listen to them on YouTube. So those were getting millions of views. Like, and I was probably making like 6-7 grand a month. Granted, this stint only lasted like maybe 6 months or so before like
Still.
YouTube caught on and was like, oh, it's copyright infringement. You can't do this. Like,
That's crazy. It took them that long to catch on. Like, shows you how far YouTube's come. Now it's like if you upload something, it's like copyright like immediately, like
Yes.
before you upload the video.
This was before that they had all these like pre-checks in place. Like now YouTube's like, you can't do anything outside of like, you'll get caught like immediately. Before like YouTube wasn't like that. This was when they were first getting into all that copyright stuff that they're doing now with like music and stuff. Like even with like video, they're doing like, you can't post videos of like, for example, like UFC videos. If you don't like distort the video to make it like weird, like their AI technology will pick up that it's a UFC video and it'll automatically take it off YouTube. So like,
I've noticed that because a lot of times, like when I don't stay up for the fights, I fall asleep. I don't care too much about the fight, whatever. I'll go like try to watch the highlights on YouTube, and it's like everyone's like blurry or it's like super zoomed up, or I'm like, what is like wrong with this? I didn't even know that. That makes a lot of sense now, though.
Yep. That's just the AI technology that they have. So like this was way before AI. This was way before any of this stuff. Like, so that was that, and you know, I made really good money off that for a little while, and that was like my next thing. So then after that, 2012, 13, 14, no YouTube really until like 2015 is when I started the fitness, because that's when I was into fitness. Like anything I have on YouTube is like what I'm in, well, like what I'm interested in at the time, right? Because it makes sense. You're gonna make videos on what you're interested in. So 2015-ish, I think it was 15, 16, started the fitness YouTube page, which everybody knows.
Pump Chasers. No, not Pump Chasers. What was it?
Pump Savages.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Pump Savages.
Yeah. Anybody who's followed me or powerlifting in general would know that I had that channel. That was cool for a little while. Just the blogging and max tuning style, like, oh, day in my life of a fitness YouTuber, like didn't appeal to me anymore. That was just like super dumb. I didn't care about that at you know, after like 2017, 16, 17, right around there, just like it wasn't fun to make those videos anymore. So then started to transition to like powerlifting videos where I would like post like, you know, powerlifting style videos and like, you know, competing and powerlifting, and like those did all right. Then it was more or less like review videos on powerlifting gear, which those videos still do well today. Like those videos still generate views on a consistent basis. That's what's kind of leading me into this next point here, is like, if you're not making videos that are going to generate like long-term consistent views, it's really hard to break out with YouTube, right? It's hard to like, you have to have the audience there. You have to have the people that want to watch that, and that want to, that you're going to have viewers continuously come back to the channel because they're going to be searching up like, for example, like SPD belt review, right? Like that's something that's
always going to be, maybe not always, but like people, it's a video people could always click on if they're buying an SPD belt.
Right, exactly. Which is, it's hard. So like, yeah. And then obviously after the fitness stuff, just kind of got into like the investing, because that's obviously what I was in at the time, just investing. So like you go through like these different phases where like you know, you like different things and you're doing different things. So yeah, man, that's kind of the backstory behind YouTube, right? And that kind of leads me into the point where I'm at now, where I have my YouTube channel still. I just haven't really posted on it much, and we'll talk about that. But I think the channel has like 5,500 subscribers, right? Nothing crazy, but YouTube finance is pretty lucrative. You can make some really good money. You
can make a lot more than a lot of other channels. I don't think people realize it, especially if, like you said, you take the route of creating like evergreen content. And I feel like that's why I ultimately went away from the stock analysis videos, because, you know, if I make a stock analysis video about Walgreens or, you know, Corsair, it's like what Walgreens and Corsair are doing now, I might not agree with, you know, 2 years down the road. I could be sold out of that company or whatever the case may be, and it might not be relevant. But if I make like, you know, a video about 5 frugal living hacks or 5 best investments in your 20s, there's a good chance that that's going to be relevant for 5 or 10 years or so. Right. Obviously it's tough because those stock analysis videos do so well, and you know, the other videos don't do as well. So it's like kind of finding that balance. But once this channel does start to get a little bit bigger, I ultimately don't want to do any of those stock analysis videos, because on top of that, I don't want people to buy a stock because I'm buying a stock, or sell a stock because I don't like a stock. Like I don't like the whole idea behind it, but you know, it is what it is. Sometimes you have to do those videos to get like the views at the end of the day. Right.
And that's where the point where I was at. So like, I was doing those stock analysis videos, right? And I was like, that was what I was doing. My main focus was doing those. They were doing well. I was like one of the first people to do Neo stock analysis video. You can go look it up. Like those videos did very well, like 5, 6, 7,000 views, 10,000. I think one of them has. But those videos do well for a period, right? And then more videos come out, and those videos just get pushed down the list in the algorithm, and they don't get any more views. So they don't get any more traction after like the first like couple weeks.
Yeah.
Right. Which is why I transitioned to doing the What You Need to Know series of each stock, right? So I would take a company from the start of its inception, like what it was doing in the beginning, where it is now, and everything in between. And I'd build up to the point where we'd have all the information of the stock to where it is in this day and age, right? And I was trying to make it a series where you could come on and you could watch a company from like where they were until they are now and get a full like retrospective on what they've done in one spot, right? The thing with those is people don't really care, right? People care about what's the stock doing right now.
That's the thing. They want to know what's the next 10x stock, what's the next game stock, Tesla, Dogecoin, etc.
Right, which I have no interest in. Like I don't really care about doing any penny stock review videos or like what's this penny stock going to do. Like, and those videos do very well. But here's at the end of the day, those videos do very well for a short period of time, and they couldn't generate a couple $100 a video in ad revenue. But after that, they're going to be $0 in revenue for like going forward.
Exactly.
And you're not doing this for money, like per se, but it is to see some money come back after you put a lot of money or a lot of time into investing into researching this company. And I would spend hours a day, right? And sometimes you just don't see that reward back, and it's tough, man, because like you put all this time into making these videos on top of working a full-time job, right, outside of my job. Right after work, my day would be work 8 to 5, after work go to the gym, come home, either script out a video for the next day or film a video for the next day, edit it, would be go to bed at like 11 p.m. and then do it all again the next day. And it's just like you get to the point where it's like it's so much, it's like you get burned out essentially. Like there's so much that goes into these videos,
Right.
And to not see the consistent long-term growth of these videos that you're making, it's tough, man. It's like I like doing the videos, but I also want to see them generate views residually, right? Like, and it's a hard thing to do in the finance where you can make it cliche, like, oh, like investing tips or your frugal living videos, right? But you only can do so many of those videos, right? So it's finding that balance between making content that people want to see, but also making content that people are going to continuously want to see over the long term, and it's going to make the channel continuously grow. Not having to make a video that does 5,000 views every week and you get like 150 new subscribers, but then the video falls off and you don't get any more people from it. So it's like I felt like I was just chasing something, and it was like it wasn't getting the returns that I was hoping it was going to. It was getting returns obviously, but it wasn't long term wise. I don't think it was the most efficient way to make content.
I know what you mean.
So I took a step back from YouTube, right? So I haven't made videos in like 4 months?
4 months or so, 4 or 5 months, yeah.
And it's just kind of reevaluating like how I want to proceed with the channel. Like it's not forever done. It's just a matter of like figuring out what that thing is that is going to
spark like that drive again.
Yeah.
It sounds like you got a little burnt out.
Yeah, 100%.
And I was
very burnt out.
The amount of videos you were putting out, I thought you were like gonna get burnt out. I'm like, he's gonna get burnt out. Like the amount of caffeine you were taking, I'm like, he's gonna get burnt out. And that's why I ultimately decided to kind of scale back my content, and I went from 3 videos a week to 1 video a week, because I'm like, I know that this is not going to be sustainable, because it was like literally the same schedule. It was like, like wake up very early, like 5 a.m., like either film a video, which it wasn't always the easiest thing because I'm not always awake when I wake up, like first thing, or script out a video or edit a video, upload it. And it was basically like the same thing every single day, on top of researching stocks, keeping up with stocks. And at the time I had a girlfriend, so that was not to say like, that was taking away my time, but it also something I wanted to put time into. I wanted to spend time with her, and then family, and then, trying to have a social life and all these things. And I'm like, fortunately, I realized this before I actually got burnt out, and I'm like, I'm definitely going to get burnt out if I keep doing this.
Yes.
So I'm like, let me go from 3 videos a week to 1 video a week. And I realized this is not enough traction. I'm like, I'm never going to become a YouTube partner doing this.
Yes.
Because, making 1 15-minute video a week is fine. But at the same time, if I want this to eventually become a profitable venture, it's going to be a lot harder to see that traction making 1 video a week.
Right.
So luckily, I came up with this idea of doing this podcast, which I really enjoy, because although it takes like, it honestly doesn't take that much time. Like it probably only takes like maybe 5 hours a week, depending on the week. Because sometimes, like we were talking about, sometimes I stack them up ahead of time. Like this one probably won't go up until like maybe the first week in October.
Right.
So, and that's good because doing one a week, it's like I can stack them ahead of time, and I have a busy week or I just don't feel like doing anything, long week at work, whatever the case may be. I can essentially put off like my guests another week and just have them come back on like the next week when I'm feeling a lot better, which I think is great. And it does a lot with the watch time because me personally, whenever I listen to a podcast, I almost always watch it
in the background.
Almost always. Like I'll have it like on the TV, I'll have it on the laptop. I'll almost always watch it, which is great because it helps with the watch time a lot, because posting an hour and a half video, let's say 10 people watch it, that's 10 hours of watch time. As opposed to 10 people watching a 15-minute video, that is not 10 hours of watch time.
Right. And then people fall off the video or don't watch the full thing through. Like that's the other thing with YouTube is like the algorithm is very touchy. Like if you have a video that in the beginning doesn't do well at all and gets no traction, it will literally get like dumped to the bottom of the list of like the end of your video will do like crap.
I know, it's insane. I'm really trying to put a lot of time into really thinking about my titles and thumbnails. Like just like literally I could spend like 30 minutes to an hour just thinking about it. Like what is the perfect title? What can I do to make this thumbnail really stand out?
Right.
Because at the end of the day, I feel like it really sucks, but that's the most important thing. Because I could put this value packed video together that has like so many different gems. And then at the end of the day, it's just like doesn't do well because the thumbnails like sucks or the title's not good. Which really sucks at the end of the day.
It does, man.
But it is what it is. That's what you got to do. That's what you signed up for.
It makes sense from a logical standpoint, right? Like YouTube, they want to keep people on the platform as long as possible and keep people engaged as long as possible.
Oh, I get it. Yeah.
So like they're gonna put the best videos. It makes complete sense to me, right? But it's just it's tough for those smaller channels, right? Or people that have content, they don't know how to optimize it properly. So yeah, no, it's a tough thing.
Right. Now let's get back on track about your YouTube channel here. So you kind of had Minds Money Power like back in the day. This was back in, what was this, 2017 or so, 2018, somewhere in that range.
18, yeah.
So you had a website, you had a podcast, you had the YouTube channel.
Yep.
What happened with that?
Yeah.
Where did that go? Like it just disappeared one day. Like one day I tried to go to the website and it was gone. Like I'm like, what happened?
So website was there, podcast was there, everything was there.
Is that podcast still live? Or are all those episodes taken down?
They're not live on that platform, but you can still look up Minds Money Power, and the podcast is still like you can find them on like Google search if you want to find them out. So that story, right? That was when I was in the transition period where I was getting an internship. I was like in between jobs. I was working. Like the Minds Money Power thing was how I thought of it was like minds, money, like obviously minds, like your mind, like money, and then power, like powerlifting. I was trying to combine the three together into one concept. And it wasn't what I was hoping to make it out to be. So it was good. I enjoyed it, but it's just it was another thing coming down to time. Like you only have so much time in a day to make content for a website, like writing articles, right? Linking articles. Like my goal was to have like a video and an article together, have them linked, and then also have like the podcast too, and have people on the podcast and have that content. And it was just a lot of work, man. Like not to sound like I don't like to do a lot of work, but
Dude, it's just people don't understand how much work it is.
It's like, so much work to manage a website, a podcast, and YouTube videos at the same time. So like it was just a lot, man. It really just came down to like I was at the point where like it was either like full-time entrepreneur or continue on the track where I'm at today, like stay in finance, work at a bank, like, have that stability, right? And at the time when you're like, 24, 25, going on 25, you need health insurance, right? And like health insurance is super expensive, right?
Yeah, it's not cheap.
And if you're an entrepreneur, like full-time, like you have to pay all these expenses out of pocket.
Yeah.
So I went into the route where I was like, I wanted to just do part-time YouTube and not have to focus on 3 things at one time, right? Like those are 3 things that take up a lot of time in your day to do, like doing the research for articles, writing the articles, proofreading all the articles, making sure everything lines up, makes sense, finding different pictures, format, all these different things that they think like they take up a lot of time in your day. So that's kind of what happened with that. I genuinely enjoyed doing it. It was just a matter of like you only have so much time in a day to do things, man. And it's tough, you know?
Yeah, it really sucks because like, it sounds like you got burnt out again. It's just like, people don't understand that. They're like, well, you only made a 15-minute video. Why are you like exhausted? It's like, I don't think you understand how much mental energy, how much of a thought process goes into that 15-minute video. Like, it doesn't just like appear and I just click publish. Like, that's not even close to what happens. Like, there's so much thought that goes into it. It's insane. And
I'm glad you realize it, because people don't. And
I also do it. Like, you know what I mean?
Exactly, yeah.
Like, and it's like that with, I think, any job, because some jobs might be easier than others on paper, but it's like, you don't understand how much stress these jobs actually cause.
Right.
At the end of the day.
Oh, there's so much stress. You know how it is. Like,
Yeah.
projects on projects and projects, and like you're slammed with work, and you're like, oh, well, now I have to go make content for my website, and like, at the end of the day, sometimes the work, you just don't want to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
And what people don't understand, and this is the really hard thing for people to swallow, is they're like, why don't you just not do it? Because it's like an arbitrary thing at the end of the day. Like, we don't have to be sitting here right now doing this. I don't have to make a video to upload on Monday. They're like, why are you doing it? What if it stresses you out? And it's just like, because I love it. Like, at the end of the day, I enjoy doing it, and it's like important to me. And I also feel like, say I did have one of those days where it's like, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to upload a video this week, which I did have for like, you know, some personal stuff.
Yeah.
And let's say that 1 week turns into 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks, and then a month.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden I'm like, what's YouTube anymore? Like, and I'm also at the point where it's like, you know, I could stop doing it. Like, you know, it's not like it's like not paying my rent. It's like not paying my groceries. Like, but I'm also like, what if I just keep going, like, you know, one more video and one more video? And I'm like, what if I keep doing one more podcast?
Right.
And I'm like, what if I just kept doing it for like a couple more years and see what happens? I promised myself when I started this, I'd do it for minimum. Like, I'm like, worst case scenario, like, I hate doing it, I'll do it for 2 years.
Right.
Like, that was my promise to myself and my girlfriend at the time. I was like, I will do this for at least 2 years. So I still like doing it. I really liked enjoying these podcasts. Like, I think I enjoy more than the YouTube videos, because it's cool, because I get to sit down with people I don't know, like, or that I don't know that well. Like, you know, I haven't seen you in a few years, so it's cool to sit down and catch up with you. I never met Max before, so it's nice to sit down and kind of talk and pick his brain.
Right.
And then, you know, I've had people on here, like my friend Zach, who I hadn't seen in a long time. I had Ariana on here, which I haven't seen her in, I don't even know how long. It's been several years.
Right.
So I like the networking aspect of it, and like, you know, get to meet people, socialize, because it's like, the way I describe it to people is like, we're literally having a conversation about you, me, like anything, and we're just posting on the internet. Like, that's the only thing. Like, obviously it's a little bit different with the mic, the headphones, the lights, but essentially that's the essence of it at the end of the day.
Yeah. And like, it brings value to people. Like, if you're talking about investments and like, you know, different things that we're doing with investing, and like, people can get different ideas from it, or they can just see other people's perspectives on things. I think, honestly, I really, out of everything that I did between, you know, the website, podcast, I really enjoyed my podcast. Right. The hard thing with the podcast is continuing to find guests.
That's the thing. I'm like very fortunate the direction I'm going in with this, where I want to make it like Joe Rogan. I try to call this JFE instead of JRE, if you know what I mean. But like, I'll talk about like anything. Like, that's the thing. Like, obviously, like, the YouTube channel is finance related, but we can talk about mental health. We can talk about business. Like, you know, obviously Nick's come on a couple of times. He's very into the stock market, but I've also had people on that have their own podcasts and how they want to grow that. I've also had people on, like, you know, Ariana, how she wants to grow her blog and her plans with that.
Which I watched, and it was really good, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was good.
I'm sure she'll appreciate hearing that. I've also had my friend Chris on, who's very interested in mental health. Like, I have people on, you know, my friend Tyler's really into music. He's becoming a musician. Like, we'll literally talk about anything.
Right.
Like, even if, like, say you're interested in art, I'm like, I don't know shit about art. Like, I don't know. Literally, you could be like, this painting's worth $300,000. I'd be like, why? Like, no idea. But if that's something you're passionate about, I'll research it for a couple of weeks leading up to it, so I can hold the conversation with you and, you know, push that out to people that are interested in art and stuff like that. So because of that, I think I can find a lot more guests. But if you're just looking for a very, I guess, financially stable, financial direction podcast, like strictly about the stock market, strictly about real estate, that could be harder to find more guests.
Yeah. But it's good, though, that you're open to other things, too. And, like, there's always different things you can do with the podcast. You can have people come back on the show, obviously. Like, I could come back on, like, do another part. Like, it's just a matter of, like, what you're trying to do with that podcast, where you're trying to bring it. Everybody's different. And, like, you sound like you're open to a lot of different things. So I think that you should have success with it.
I also, that's the thing, I learn a lot too by doing it. Like
Yes.
if, like again, we're going back to the art example, like if you came on and we talked about art for 2 hours, like I'd probably learn so much that I didn't know, like before, like hopping on the mic with you. It's insane.
No, absolutely. And it's very good learning experience. That was one thing when I had my podcast, I would have guests on and, I would learn something new from every guest that came on. And it's very cool because you're expanding, obviously, your networking, you're learning more things that you didn't know before. And it's cool content that people would want to watch. There's value in, you can get something from any podcast you watch.
Yeah.
You can learn something new from anything. So,
Right.
Yeah, no, I think it's good, man.
I like it because every single person I've had on, like, I'm trying to think. I think every single person said I would do that again. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Like no one's had like a bad time coming on here. It seems
Right.
like.
Well,
So
I mean, how could you?
yeah,
You know,
right.
You're just talking.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Having a good time.
Like some people I can tell are very nervous. Like I've had people come on, we click record and we start and they're like, I don't know if I'm ready for this, which is, it's fine. Like, it's not normal to feel comfortable talking in front of a camera.
Right.
But, over time they loosen up a little bit. And then by the end of it, they're like, that was pretty cool.
Right.
That was nice. Like I would do that again.
Yeah.
But anyway, going back to you.
Yeah.
So you left YouTube, you left Minds Money Power.
Yep.
Why did you come back to YouTube?
I came back to YouTube because I love video. Like I've had a video camera since I was, I think I was like, my first camera I got, I was like 8 years old. So I've always been into photo, video of some sort. I genuinely enjoy it, man. It's a way for me to escape into to do something that I genuinely enjoy doing. Like
Just be creative.
Yeah, I like making content. Like I at my heart, I'm a content creator. I like it. I enjoy it. Like I like creating things. So that's really why I came back to YouTube, man. Like I missed it. I missed making the videos. What I have to find for myself at this point, man, is like, now that I'm in the corporate world, I have a full-time job. Like I have like deadlines, obligations, like it's finding the time to even just fit it in, like even making a video a week, right? I just got to find out what I want to do that would be of value for the long term of the channel, not just for a week, not just 2 weeks, right? Something that somebody would come back to and continuously want to watch. So I think it's just finding that, man. Like I was really hoping that the finance channel would take off where I was, what we just talked about in the whole beginning of this podcast or halfway through, whatever it was, of, building up the anticipation of every video to build off the next video. And it's just, I didn't see the traction there for that. So,
Right.
Yeah, man, it's not that I'm going away or I'm never coming back to YouTube. It's just a matter of like figuring out like, what is that thing? Right.
You could do a podcast. You could start that up again.
I've thought about it. It's just
Organizing the guests. Is that the big
organizing, I
thing?
guess. It's a lot of, the goal would be to have very valuable content with not a lot of effort to say, or a lot of outside research, or something that could bring a lot of value that wouldn't require a lot of time outside of my day job,
Gotcha.
that would bring people to the channel, bring a lot of value. And it's just like kind of finding that balance, right? Like, for example, you can make a vlog video that's like 2 hours long about your day in the life, eating. Nobody cares about, really. Like maybe there's some people that watch that stuff, but I don't care about that. And that video would take forever for you to like make, edit, record, and it might get a few thousand views, and it's probably not going to do good on ads because those type of videos don't have a lot of ad revenue, right? Whereas with finance, yeah, the ad revenue is higher on those type of videos. But it's about finding that balance of like time, how much time you're putting into it, what are you getting out of it. It's tough, man. YouTube's a tough place to make it, right? It's very hard, especially now. And you were talking with Max about this, right? It's very hard now with this. So it's so saturated. There's so many people on the platform, right? There's so many people that doing the same thing you are. How do you differentiate yourself from everybody else? And that's what I was trying to do with my channel with finance. I didn't see anybody doing that type of content, right? Where they were making what you need to know about this company from the beginning of inception to the end. Like nobody was really doing that. But
Yeah.
those type of videos didn't really. They did okay for like the first like I said, week or two, but then they weren't getting the residual views I was hoping they were going to get.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, I think I think you should come back.
I'm not ruling it out. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of like figuring out like what that thing is.
I
right?
get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like you said, it's just tough. Like sometimes you put all this effort into like these videos and it just like they get like no views and you're like back to the drawing board.
Right.
Like it's annoying. I know exactly what you mean. It can be very degrading, but at the same time I'm like now it's like, you know, I'm a single guy, like I live by myself. I'm like, what would I be doing? Like I'd have all this time. Like I'd probably be like, you know, watching Netflix, which I've never been a huge fan of, or like I don't know what I'd be doing if I wasn't doing this stuff. So I'm like, might as well just keep doing it until I find something better, you know?
No, yeah.
Like, and I enjoy doing it at the end of the day.
That's all that matters, man. Like if you're enjoying doing it and you like it and it's working for you, then you just do it, right?
Yeah.
Continue doing it. For me, it was like I was spending all this time doing all this stuff and it was doing good, making decent ad revenue money, but they weren't getting the views long term that I was hoping for. And I was wanting to spend more time with family and friends, and like
Right.
it takes up a lot of your time to make these videos, and like it was the summertime coming up and I was like, oh, I want to spend time with friends and family on the weekends. Like some of the times like you're spending a lot of time making the content on the weekends and you don't have time to go out with friends. So like I'm not ruling it out. It's just a matter of like figuring out that
Right.
thing. Yeah.
I've been considering going back up to 2 videos a week. I know we were talking about this the other day.
Yep.
But the thing is, I'm worried about being able to put out 2 quality videos a week that I'm really proud of, first of all.
Yes.
Second of all, I'm worried doing that on top of the podcast, and then the third video, or the second video rather, is that going to burn me out? And that's what I'm afraid of. So I'm thinking about committing to 1 to 2, like maybe 1 definitely, and then one of it's like, yeah, I got some extra free time, like, you know, I'm, you know, all set with the podcast. I'm booked like a month out, like I'm all set. Maybe throw out a second one. But I'm trying to like, you know, find that balance without burning myself out. But I do think I need to find a way to increase the frequency just to get, you know, the watch time, just
Yes.
keep putting out the content. So that's what I've really been spending a lot of time thinking about right now. Titles, thumbnails, and how can I increase this frequency, but also increase the quality as well.
And engagement.
Exactly.
Yep. And you're at what? You're at a point right now where you're like 600 subscribers or around there?
560-ish, somewhere in that range.
So you're at that point where it's like you're getting to that 1,000.
That's what I mean. I'm more than
subscriber mark.
halfway there.
Yeah, exactly. So like continue doing it. Obviously,
Yeah.
just continue cranking until you get to that partnership. Once you get to that partnership part, it's like okay, like
Yeah, then it's like, all right, now we
Yeah,
can ride.
exactly.
Like the most frustrating thing is like I'll have like months where it's like I'll get like 50 subscribers, and like not even months, like a week. I'll have weeks where I get 50 subscribers. Like, and then I'll get like 50 over the next 3 months. I'm just
Yeah.
like, how is that? Like, what changed? Like, I have done nothing different.
Yeah.
Like that's the most frustrating part, I think.
it happens.
But-
Yeah, and you go through spurts, and that's all part of YouTube, man.
Yeah.
It's a tough place.
Yeah,
it's a
I
tough
hear
place.
you. Anyway, a couple miscellaneous questions here to finish
Yeah.
up before I let you go. So, we both fast in the morning, right? Are you fasted right now?
Absolutely.
So am I.
Yep.
Why do you do that? Talk about the science behind it.
I love it. So number one, fasting is great. It really helps you just stay focused. Number one, like I'm so alert right now. Like if I think of it like this, right? If you,
That's not the coffee.
well, no,
I'm just kidding.
no, the coffee contributes to you being like, obviously like hyped up and ready
Yeah.
to go. Like, but even when I don't have the coffee in the morning, like when I wake up and I'm fasting, like I'm just way more alert because you're thinking about, if you just go way back in time, like you were thinking about like, oh, when's my next meal? When am I going to get my next meal? So you're like alert. You're thinking of all these different things. And when you eat and you're content, think if you just had like a nice burger and fries, like you just like, you get sluggish. So you get brought down. So the science behind it is like, number one, it can increase your longevity of life. Like there's been scientific research done on it, and you can look this up on your own. I'm not claiming to be a doctor or anything like that, just based off my own research, right? It's been proven that in mice, for example, like that, it's been proven that fasting helps with living longer. Also fights aging, fights disease. So there's all these different benefits of fasting that people don't realize, and I enjoy doing it. Even before I did all this research, I've been fasting for probably the last like 3 or 4 years, I would say. It's been a while, yeah.
It's wild because there's that saying, breakfast is the most important meal of the day.
No,
and then there's like this stuff we're talking about.
It's not the most important meal of the day. That's like ludicrous.
Yeah.
I don't know who made that up.
Probably ludicrous.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, I've been doing it for probably close to, I don't know if it's been a year. It's probably been close to a year.
What made you get into it?
I think talking to you,
Okay.
and then I looked into it a little bit, and I really enjoyed it. It was very hard at first because I don't have a big appetite. So I was always someone that would eat, like, I'd have breakfast and then I usually wouldn't eat lunch, and then I'd eat like an earlier dinner, and then I would just go to bed.
Okay.
So it was very hard at first to, I think it was more so breaking the habit of like getting up in the morning and not eating breakfast. And it took me
Takes
a
time.
couple of, I guess, failed attempts, like, a couple of failed days. Like, but I started off, instead of eating breakfast, like 5 or 6 when I wake up, I'd eat it at like, 6 or 7. And then eventually it moved towards later. And even some days, like, I'll wake up, and maybe it's because I didn't eat that much the day before. I only ate like one meal, and I didn't eat like till really late in the day. And I eat breakfast, but that's like rare. Like I'll try to, like, the earliest I try to eat is like 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Like that's the earliest. But a lot of times, like especially on the weekends, it's very easy for me to go till like this time without eating, and I feel like completely fine. I honestly forget I'm even hungry.
Right.
Yeah.
You do, and that's the thing. Like, my typical like morning routine is like, I'll stop. My last meal will probably be around like 8 or 9 at night, and then I fast obviously all night, and until you wake up, and then throughout the entire morning, my first snack, I guess you could say, because I don't really eat a big breakfast, is around like 11 a.m. And it will consist of the same thing every day, Monday through Friday. Weekends, I kind of just do what I want. Like, if I want to eat, I'll eat. Like, so Monday through Friday, I'll have like a handful of almonds, handful of walnuts, handful of pistachios, just like good food that I like to eat. Like, I don't really eat a lot of junk food. So like, that's what usually I'll have. Peanuts. And then I'll have banana with peanut butter. This is right around 11 o'clock. And then I have some dark chocolate as well. Antioxidants in there. So that's always good. And then an apple usually, right? And then I don't really eat until later on in the day usually. Like after the gym, maybe around like 7 o'clock. Sometimes I'll have a bigger breakfast where I'll have like eggs and like Ezekiel bread. I like Ezekiel bread, has good benefits there. So it really just depends, but most of the time it's just like almonds, like nuts. Like, I eat that with like a banana and peanut butter, and I'm good to go. Like, it's about just training your body, right?
Right.
And like using food as a way of just being efficient.
Yeah.
And just, you don't need to eat 7 times a day.
Yeah.
You don't really need to. It doesn't make any sense, right?
It's crazy because some people think they do.
and I'm just as strong as I was when I was powerlifting.
Right.
I was like, oh man, like, I gotta eat Chipotle, like, I gotta eat all these calories.
Gotta
like,
dog those calories.
yeah. And like, I don't know. You go from that lifestyle to like doing that, and you just realize that none of that stuff's important.
Right.
And you just gotta do what's best for you.
Yeah.
So
I completely agree. I've really enjoyed doing it. I really wish more people would look into it. But I mean, like with everything, the water's there. You just got to find out how you want to drink it at the end of the day.
right.
Yeah. All right. Last question for you before I let you go here.
Cool.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you have like goals for yourself? Like, where do you want to be in 5 years?
Yeah, 5 years, man. So I recently just bought my condo. Bought that right before the pandemic. It's gone up like 40 grand in value.
Oof, I was going to say, you must be up a very handsome percentage there.
It's very nice. My whole goal behind me getting this condo was, this was going to be like a long-term investment property for me. I was going to use it as, I was just going to rent it out, right?
Right.
So long-term, next 5 years, obviously I want to continue getting better at my job that I'm at currently. I'll get promoted. And then also I want to get another property. So whether that be, I've been looking into multifamilies, or another condo in like a city like Providence, which they're kind of expensive. But if the values come down at some point, which I'm hoping, then that might be a feasible thing.
Everything's expensive right now.
So expensive.
My friend got a house for asking price the other day. I know, right? He told me that. Yeah.
Wow.
He told me that. I'm like, you're lying. And he showed me. He's like, no, we close in like a couple months. I'm like, what? Yeah, I couldn't believe it. It was in Connecticut.
Good for him. I mean,
yeah, I could not believe it.
that's crazy.
Yeah. Anyway, continue.
So yeah, I mean, long term, 5 years. I'd like to have another property, so it's just a matter of figuring out what that is. I like the ability to have investments property that will work for me in the long term. Like, I want to retire, or I'm going to. It's just inevitable. I'm going to retire like a multimillionaire. Like, it's just a matter of time and just continuing to do what I'm doing.
Right.
So I don't want to have to work my entire life. Like, I want to be able to just wake up one day and be like, this. Am I allowed to swear on this podcast?
Yeah, I'll cut it out.
Okay.
Be yourself.
Yeah. I want to just wake up one day and be able to, like, screw this. I'm done. Like, I don't want to work anymore, and just be able to do it and just live off of like investment property and investments. So, that's really my goals at this point, man. Like, obviously, probably more stuff will come up, but I like what I'm doing at my job. Just got a raise. I've been doing good. So
Nice.
like everything's going good there, and just more properties, more investments, and
Just continue to grow that net worth at the end of the day.
that's it, man.
Yeah.
So
Anyway, Dave, thanks so much for coming on. I really appreciate you taking time and sitting down with me.
absolutely.
Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you?
Yeah. I have a YouTube page, obviously. So you can just look up Dave Lotito on YouTube. You can find any of my videos there. LinkedIn. I don't really have a big Instagram anymore. So those days of being like Instagram famous, no.
They've fallen off.
I just have a regular Instagram now with, a few hundred people, just people that I stay close with. But yeah, just like LinkedIn or YouTube. So
Yeah. All Dave's stuff will be linked down below. Thanks again for coming on, Dave.
Absolutely.
Thanks again for listening, everyone. Bye, everybody.